Hi guys, so recently I got a request to do a video about the tracking tool in the Fusion tab of Davinci Resolve. So today we're going to have a look at about 4 different situations where we can use different settings in the tracker to do different things for, different things you want to do. That didn't quite make too much sense, but anyways, I have to say that since I'm using the free version of Davinci Resolve, I do not have the camera tracker or the 3D tracker. So like in cases where you want to put a CG car in the middle of your scene and kind of walk around it and things like that, you would require that tracker, which I obviously cannot do in the free version. But in lots of situations where you want to track maybe a logo or a text to follow an object, or maybe put something on the wall or do some sky replacement, the free version is completely fine. So today we're going to have, as I said, have a look at 4 different examples. So let's get started. For the first example, I will start with something simple. So let's say you want to track something to stick to this bicycle rider, maybe like a logo or some text or something. So first of all, I'm going to bring in this Instagram logo, which I've kind of downloaded, and maybe we could adjust the size and the position roughly first. So maybe I'll just go to the Inspector tab and reduce its size and move the position, maybe reduce its size a little bit more and put it maybe somewhere around here. Okay, so once you roughly set up your scene, just highlight all the tracks, right click and go to New Fusion Clip, and then we'll just go into the Fusion tab and wait a little while because my computer is not too powerful. Okay, so it's set up the scene roughly for us, but I'm just going to delete all the connections for now. And let's have a look at the media one. So I'm just going to drag it into this monitor right here. So this is our original video. So what we need to do is basically extract the movement information of this bicycle rider. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift Spacebar and add a planar tracker. And in this planar tracker, I'm going to draw a rough mask around the area. So you can choose where to track. You can just track if you want like a specific point for your logo or text to follow. You can just draw a mask around that area carefully, but I'll just roughly track it around, maybe this lower half of the bicycle along with his legs. And there you go, close the mask. So the tracker in Davinci Resolve or the Fusion is quite smart, so normally you don't really have to draw it that precisely. Now once you've drawn the area you want to track, you just go to the inspector and change a few settings. So we want the operation mode to be track and the tracker to be point and hybrid area. So basically with point tracking, it will just only look for like areas of contrast, maybe like around here where there's like a white dot and black around, and maybe around his trouser where there's like shadow and stuff. But with the hybrid point area, it will look both at the contrast area or contrast points and also how the pixels change within the area. So it's a bit more advanced. Now usually I just start with hybrid point area, and if I encounter any problem then I'll come back and try to point, and usually they both get kind of similar results, so I'll just leave it at hybrid point area. And again, if there's any problem, then I'll come back and try to fine-tune the setting. For the motion type, I just want to track the movement, so I just do the translation, so the movement left to right and up and down. And output, I just leave it at background, and the track channel, I just leave it at luma. So basically with some track, if you're having problems, you might want to try tracking the green or the blue or the red channels, because with some footage in the different channels you might get contrast, better contrast, and so you can get a better track. But usually luma should be fine. So again, I just leave it at luma. If there's any problem, then I'll try to come back and kind of fine tune the settings to see if it helps. Okay, so let's begin our track. Now I've put the frame at the first frame, and so if I click this one, it's just going to track from where my playhead is all the way to the end. Or if I click this one, it will track frame by frame, 1 frame at a time. So every time I click, it will track 1 frame, click, track another frame. So again, it's for like more difficult tracks where you're prone to encounter like more problems. So you can go frame by frame to move carefully and slowly along. But in this case, there shouldn't be any problem. So I'll just click this one. And as you can see, the tracker in Davinci Resolve actually is very nice and fast. So we just check it manually quickly, and everything seems to be fine. So now we can extract this information out. So I'm just going to click Create Planar Transform, and now we get a new node which contains the information of how much the bicyclists move to the right, to the left, or up and down. And we're just going to plug in our Instagram logo into this node so it moves along with the bicycle rider, as you can see. So now all that's left to do is just combine this with this. So for our original video, I'm going to right click this node and connect it into the merge node and choose background. And for the Instagram logo, we want to put on top, so I'm going to right click, drag it in, and put it as a foreground. Now we look at the merge node and have a quick play. As you can see, now the Instagram logo is tracked to the bicycle rider. Now if you want to change the position of the logo a bit, you can of course do that as well. You just click on the original Instagram logo node and press shift spacebar and search for the transform node. And with the transform node, you can just move the logo around, maybe move it down, up a little bit, left to right, and increase the size if you want, things like that. And well, just do whatever you want basically. Okay, so this is like a simple example. Let's move on to the second example. So for the second example, let's pretend we want to attach our Instagram logo onto this wall right here, as if it's spray painted onto the wall. So when the camera kind of pans around, the Instagram logo will have to shift perspective correctly to look correctly as if it's spray painted on the wall. So okay, so for this example, it's basically exactly the same, but I'm just going to right click here and go to new Fusion clip, so we don't actually have to bring in the Instagram logo beforehand in the edit tab. We'll just go straight into the Fusion tab, and the scene is kind of just basically set up from input to output, so nothing in between. And again, we're just going to get the planar tracker to extract the movement information. So this time we want the movement information of the wall around this area. So again, I'm just going to draw a square around this area like this, so. And for the setting, again, I'm going to use the hybrid point area. And for the motion type, this time I'm going to do perspective, because I don't just want the movement from left to right, but I want it so that when the camera pans from left to right, the perspective shift is also calculated. So obviously when you're looking at the wall straight on, you can see like a rectangle, but as the camera pan and move differently, the shape of the wall would change according to the perspective of the camera. So this tracking method is quite good when you want to attach things to like flat surfaces, maybe a wall, maybe a kind of like the floor, the ground, things like that. So again, I'm going to move to the first frame, and using perspective, output background, track channel luma as before, and I'm going to start tracking. So again, the tracker in the Fusion tab is pretty fast. Actually in Davinci Resolve in general, even in the color tab, is really quick. So let's just check quickly. Everything seems fine. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag in my Instagram logo from the folder I've saved it at. So just drag it in. You can put it anywhere on your computer. And with the Instagram logo, I'm just going to drag it into the planar tracker node. I'm going to right click and drag it in and use it as a corner pin. Now if I click on the planar tracker node and the operation mode, I'm going to change from track to corner pin. Now corner pin is basically if you have a kind of like a square picture or a square video image or a square logo in this case, you have 4 corners, right? So we can just place that 4 corners wherever we want to attach to the our scene basically. So right now I've tracked this wall right here, so I want to attach my Instagram logo to the wall. I'll just place the 4 corner on the wall. So this method you can probably see quite often used when filming screens in movies. So in TV screens in movies, when they're filming, usually they don't actually have anything on the screen. They just have like tracking markers, right? So once they filmed it in post-production, they will use some program to place a video or an image on the screen that they want. So basically you just put these 4 corners on the 4 corners of the screen and it will just match perfectly. So in this case, I'm just going to fast forward to a frame that's kind of front on, so the wall is kind of nice and rectangle. And in this frame, I'm just going to place my Instagram logo so it's nice and square. And if you don't want to drag it around here, you can also go to the inspector tab, open the corner pin options, and you can also move the corners around using the X and Y coordinates right here. So I'm probably just going to do it roughly because I don't want to waste too much of your time. So maybe I move it just slightly down like this. Okay, this will do. And in this option tab, you can also change the blending mode as well. So the apply mode, well, the blending mode in Photoshop and Premiere Pro in this program will be called apply mode. So you can change it to maybe like soft light or overlay, so it looks like it's spray painted onto the wall. And now if we kind of play it, you can see that the perspective of the Instagram logo changes correctly according to how the camera pans. So it looks like it's really kind of stuck or painted onto the wall. So it's actually quite nice and easy, to be honest, not too hard. Yeah, so that's the second example. Now let's go and have a look at our third example for another situation. In the third example, let's say we want to track the movement of this scene so that we can replace the sky. So obviously the sky that we replace, it has to kind of move around and rotate around to match the movement of the foreground. So again, I'm just going to bring in a sky image right here and just make it the same length as the footage below. Select both footage, right click, go to new Fusion clip, and again go into the Fusion tab. And just wait a while because my computer is quite laggy. Okay, again, I'm just going to disconnect all the connections and have a look at the original image. So this is the image where I want to track the movement. So in this case, I want to track a movement of something that will move similarly to the sky. So I would say this building probably has the same movement as the sky because it's really far away and it's just sitting still. So if the camera kind of rocks about, you know, turn left and right and move around, it will move exactly the same way as the sky would move. So again, I'm just going to press Shift Spacebar, get the planar tracker and add it to the node. And this time I'm going to draw around this building right here. Maybe this wall right here should be fine. And again, I'm going to use track, and the tracker is hybrid point and area. Motion type, this time I just want to track the movement, so the translation left, right, up and down, and also the rotation. So when the skyline is kind of moving, rotating, you know, clockwise and anti-clockwise, our sky would kind of follow the rotation around. So I'm going to change to translation and rotation, and everything else is the same. Again, go to the first frame and track forward, and takes no time at all. And just have a quick check manually. Everything seems fine. So again, I'm going to extract the information, the movement information, by clicking this create planar transform. So I get this node. I get this node with the movement information, and I'm just going to plug the sky into this node. So if we have a quick look, now the sky is basically moving in exactly the same way as our scene, which is exactly what we want. So all we have to do now is just combine the sky into the original image. And you can do this several ways, but I'm just going to do it quickly just as an example. So this is our original image down here. I'm going to right click, drag it in, and use it as a foreground. So I'm just going to place it in front. And for the sky, I'm going to right click and place it as a background. So right now you can't see the sky because it's underneath, it's the background. So what we have to do is just remove the original sky. You can do this by several methods. You can just, you know, draw a mask around here to cut out the old sky, or in this case, since we want to do it quickly, I'm just going to maybe use something like a chroma key and maybe just remove the blue or something. Just do it very quickly so you don't waste too much time, and something like this. Okay, and it's pretty much done. So obviously you can maybe blur it out a bit, but chroma key is probably not the best option for this this scene here, but we don't want to waste too much time. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And also you can move the sky around. Again, you can use the transform node just after the sky node. Transform. So with this transform node, you can, you know, move the sky around, change its size and things like that. So it's very much up to you. Okay, so it's pretty simple, really. Yeah, so let's go and have a look at the fourth example to not waste too much of your time. Oh, and if you're doing this for real, don't forget to connect your final result to the media out. Because if you don't do this, when you go back to the edit tab, you wouldn't see anything. So you have to connect any final result you've done in Fusion to the media out. So when you go back into the edit tab, you will see, you know, your final result displayed here. Okay, let's have a look at the final example. So for the final example, it's nothing complicated really. Let's say we want to place an Instagram logo next to these windows right here. So as the window kind of move closer, we want our Instagram logo to get larger as well at the same rate as the window. So it's kind of similar to the first example where we want our Instagram logo to move along with the bicyclist. But this time we want the Instagram logo to get larger as well as the window move closer. So we have to also track the scale of the area. So again, I'm just going to bring in the Instagram logo and place it at the same place. And this time I'm just going to leave it as full size and we'll just correct it in the Fusion tab itself. So again, I'm just going to highlight everything and go to New Fusion Clip and go into the Fusion tab. And wait a while again because my computer is quite laggy. And again, disconnect all the connections and let's have a look at our original image. So I'm going to track the window. So I'm going to go Shift Space Bar, get a planar tracker, and draw a box around the window area right here. Bam. Okay, so for the settings, I'm going to use hybrid point area again, and the motion type, I'm going to track the translation, rotation, and also the scale. And again, everything else just be left default and start tracking. So everything's going quite fast again. Let's have a quick check. Everything seems to be tracking fine. So again, I'm just going to go create planar transform. So we're going to extract the movement data. And I'm going to plug my Instagram logo into the movement data that we just extracted. So if you have a quick look, now the Instagram logo is getting larger at the same rate as the window right here. So this time I'm going to combine them again. The original image, right click, drag it in, use it as a background. The Instagram logo, right click, drag it in, use it as the foreground on top. So we have a look at the merge. So the Instagram logo is getting larger, but obviously it's too large right now. So what I'm going to do is add a transform node just right after the Instagram logo. So with the transform node, I can reduce the size and maybe just move it around here somewhere. And let's have a quick play. So now the Instagram logo is placed next to the window and gets larger at the same rate as the window moves closer. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty simple. Okay, so with these 4 examples, I hope it gives a better idea for beginners who want to try using the tracker to see kind of what settings it can do and what different settings are used for different situations and why you would use those settings. And basically, the principle is pretty much exactly the same in every program, but the buttons and the names might be slightly different. So obviously in After Effects, they have the exact same settings. So you have translation, but in After Effects, it would just be called position. And it also has like a position rotation, and you can choose position, rotation, and scale. So basically the principles are exactly the same, but the button and setting might be slightly different. So I hope you have a better idea of how this tracking business works, because when I kind of started, I kind of had a hard time wrapping my head around it as well. Now, just before we go, I want to just add a few tidbits of information. So as you can see today, we actually use pretty much all the settings except the affine, which is basically, if I understand correctly, is when you want to track a motion. For example, if you draw a picture onto a piece of rubber, right? And if you stretch the rubber around, the picture that you've drawn on the piece of rubber will be stretched as well, so it will deform as well. So if you want to do that in post-production, so let's say you just kind of film a piece of rubber being stretched, and you want to simulate having a picture on that piece of rubber, you might want to do the affine tracking, which I actually never used in Davinci Resolve before, because I try to search for like example footage of rubber stretching, or I didn't really have time to go film one myself, so I actually couldn't actually show you or demonstrate in this video. But basically that's pretty much what the affine tracking would do. So you have like shearing and things to track, but to be honest, I don't really the situation where people might need that is pretty specific and not very often. But if you do need something like that, you can try the affine motion type. And also you might notice that on the top there's an operation mode here, and that's a reference time. So usually when you create a new Fusion clip, right, the frame will start from frame 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as you can see, the reference time right now is also 0.0, which is the default. So if you always track from the first frame, normally you wouldn't experience any problem. But sometimes if you don't actually create a Fusion clip, you just come into the Fusion tab straight away, or even in the Fusion clip, if you want to track from, let's say, in the middle of the footage in frame 47 or something, sometimes there'll be an error. So you have to reset the reference time to the frame where you want to start tracking. Otherwise, an error box would pop up and say, like, your reference time is off, or something like that. So if you get that problem, you might want to reset your reference time, and that should work. And also for the operation mode, we've used the track and the corner pin. But obviously, if we track the movement of the picture, we can also stabilize our footage or make a certain point in the footage stay completely still. So if I, let's say, do a steady, you can see that I've tracked the window pane right here, right? So we know the movement of the window pane. So if we have the steady operation, the program will try to make it that the window frame will stay exactly still, pretty much, as you can see now. So the window frame itself is basically fixed in the same place, but the area around it is all kind of being deformed instead. So you might see this kind of effect in like the Nike commercial, or the AirPod commercial, where the headphone is kind of locked right in the middle of the screen, and everything else around it is kind of like warp around, so you get a kind of like an interesting look. And obviously, apart from being steady, you can also stabilize your footage. So if your footage is kind of like really like jittery and rocky and stuff like that, you can kind of calculate the stabilization, and it kind of remove the jitter. So basically, if your camera is jittering around a lot, the picture in your camera will also jitter up and down, left and right as well. So if you've already tracked the jittering, the jittering motion, the program can calculate that and kind of counteract it to kind of make your image smoother. But obviously, in this case, the image is pretty smooth already, so you probably don't see much difference between the original and after being stabilized. You might see less wobble or less kind of rocking motion, less rotation. So that might be the difference. Okay, anyway, I think I'll probably end it here, otherwise the video will just get too long. It's probably too long already, to be honest. So I'll just end it here, and hope it was useful, and maybe if I get a chance, I'll do another video sometime, I hope. Bye.